Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hi everyone, welcome to lecture number 20, the 7th lecture on labor market equilibrium. In our last lecture, we discussed about the labor market outcomes in a non-competitive environment where the market is in the form of monopsony. We discussed about the characteristics of a monopsonist labor market, the hiring decision of a perfectly discriminating monopsonist, and we discussed about that how it leads to some kind of misallocation or not allocating the resources efficiently as compared to a perfectly competitive market. So, in this lecture, we are going to discuss about the characteristics of a non-discriminating monopsonist. We will discuss about the hiring decisions of a non-discriminating monopsonist and the impact of the minimum wage on hiring decisions of monopsonist. A non-discriminating monopsonist like a discriminating monopsonist having the feature that is the single buyer of the labor in the labor market. However, it treats all workers equally and pays the same wage rate to all the workers. However, unlike a perfectly discriminating monopsonist which pays each worker their marginal productivity, a non-discriminatory monopsonist set a single wage rate for all the workers regardless of their individual characteristics or productivity levels. So, in this scenario, the monopsonistic employer faces an upward sloping labor supply curve and must balance the wage it pays to the workers with the number of workers it hires. However, the single wage rate set by the non-discriminating monopsonist may not reflect the full productivity of each worker, which may lead to a potential inefficiency and distortion in the labor market. Despite treating all the workers equally, the presence of a non-discriminating monopsonist can still result in reducing wages and employment level compared to a perfectly competitive labor market. Before getting into how the labor market outcomes are there in a non-discriminating monopsonist, let us discuss about the characteristics of this monopsonist labor market very briefly. We had already discussed about these characteristics in our earlier lecture. Like a perfectly discriminating monopsonist, a non-discriminating monopsonist has these particular characteristics like there is a single buyer of the labor in the labor market and the upward sloping supply curve of the labor, and the firm or the industry is having some kind of power to set the wage. So, the firm is a wage setter and there is imperfect information and there could be potential market distortion. There would be some barriers to entry and because of the geographical isolation. So, these are the properties and the characteristics of a monopsonist labor market, which are the same for a non-discriminating monopsonist labor market. A non-discriminating monopsonist must pay all the workers the same wage regardless of the workers' reservation wage, because the non-discriminating monopsonist must raise the wage to all the workers when he wishes to hire one more worker. Therefore, the labor supply curve is no longer going to give the marginal cost of hiring. So, if you look at it how the labor supply curve and the marginal cost curve of the monopsonistic labor market is there for a non-discriminating monopsonist. Let us take some example how the marginal cost differs from the total cost of hiring the workers. Here we have taken an example. Now, when the wage rate is 4, no one is willing to work at this wage rate. So, the total cost for the farm is 0 and so as the marginal cost. Now, when the farm increases the wage from 4 to 5, one worker is willing to work and the total cost to the farm is 5 and the marginal cost is also 5. When the farm increases the wage rate from 5 to 6, 2 workers are willing to work. So, the total cost for the workers is now 12, the marginal cost of the labor is 7. When the farm increases the wage rate from 6 to 7, 3 persons are willing to work. So, the total cost for the farm is 21 and the marginal cost is 9. So on and so forth, as the wage increases, the number of persons are willing to work at that increases and the total cost also increases. Now, the point here is that since being a non-discriminating monopsonist, as the wage increases, this wage is paid to all the workers. So, the person who is willing to work at 5, now if the farm requires to hire 4 workers, so everybody is getting the wage rate 8 and the total cost to the farm is 32 and the marginal cost. So, when we plot this, the increase in the marginal cost is higher than the increase in the wage rate. So, if you look at this graph, on the x axis we have taken employment, on the y axis we have taken wage rate, and the slope of this marginal cost lies above this supply curve, supply of labor, because the slope of the marginal cost is higher than the change in the wage rate, and all the workers are guided by this their value of marginal product of labor. So, demand for the labor for the farm is guided by the value of marginal product of labor. So, this is the demand function and this is the supply function, non-discriminating monopsonist, and this is the marginal cost for the non-discriminating monopsonist. So, if you look at the profit maximizing condition, the profit maximizing condition is that where the marginal cost equals to the marginal product. Now, the demand function is guided by the value of marginal product of labor and this is the marginal cost of the worker. So, the farm is getting the equilibrium at point A by hiring EM amount of worker. However, if you guided by this supply curve, the farm is hiring EM amount of worker, but paying them WM amount of wage rate. However, the value of marginal product of from the labor the farm is receiving is this BMPM at this point. So, the farm is paying WM, the farm is receiving in the form of value of marginal product from the labor is BMPM. Now, if you look at this, then you can see that there is a significant difference between the wage rate and the value of marginal product of labor. Now, had it been a situation, this would have been a perfectly competitive market, then in that situation the farm would have employed E star amount of workers at W star wage rate. Now, when we compare with the outcome of this non-discriminating monopsonist, where the wage rate is WM and the employment is EM, compared to this a competitive environment where the W star is the wage rate and E star is the employment, then definitely we can see that a non-discriminating monopsonist pays a lower wage and employs lower employment as compared to a perfectly competitive market. So, there is some kind of exploitation exist in a non-discriminating monopsonist, because at point A the farm is guided by its profit maximizing condition where the marginal cost equals to the marginal product. So, at point A the value of marginal product of labor is BMPN, which is greater than its marginal cost, which is WM. So, the labor market equilibrium shown in the figure has two important properties. First, a non-discriminating monopsonist employs fewer workers than would be employed if the markets were competitive. So, the competitive level of employment is given by the intersection of the demand and supply, or at point E star amount of workers. As a result, there is some amount of underemployment in a monopsony. If you put it differently, then you can say that the allocation of resources in a non-discriminating monopsony is not efficient. Further, the second property is that you can see the monopsonist wage, which is WM, is less than a competitive wage rate, which is W star. As I said, this is less than the value of the workers value of margin BMPM. So, in a monopsony, therefore, workers are paid less than their value of marginal product of labor. In this sense, they are exploited. So, the imposition of a minimum wage on a monopsonistic market can increase both wage and employment. So, let us try to understand how this imposition of a minimum wage can increase both wage and employment in a monopsonistic market. Here we have considered the basic demand supply model to understand the impact of minimum wage in a monopsonistic market. On the x axis we have taken the number of employment, on the y axis we have taken wage rate. Now, as you can see, if there is a monopsonist situation in the labor market is at equilibrium at point A, where the marginal cost equals to the marginal product of labor, and considering this point A, the firm is employing EM amount of worker, giving them WM amount of wage rate, and when we compare with this value of marginal product of labor, which is higher than this wage rate WM, which may lead to some kind of exploitation. Now, had it been a situation in a competitive labor market, then this would have been, the wage rate would have been W star and the amount of employment would have been E star. Now, if there is some minimum wage laws are there and it has been implemented and the minimum wage has been set at W bar. So, if the minimum wage has been set at W bar, then the firm has to hire the workers and pay them this W bar wage rate. So, the supply curve becomes perfectly elastic because the firm has to pay W bar wage rate. Now, considering this wage rate, the firm has to employ E bar amount of employment. Now, if the firm is going to pay or employ more workers than this E bar, then the firm has to pay as per their marginal cost. So, the marginal cost function then will be upward sloping after this point. Now, if you compare the outcomes of this implementation of minimum wage with the outcomes in the presence of monopsonist situation, then you can see this implementation of minimum wage has increased the wage rate from WM to W bar. It has increased the employment from EM to E bar. However, when we compare with the competitive wage rate, still this W bar wage rate is less than the competitive wage rate. So, in fact, this discussion suggests that the government can do even better. It could set the minimum wage at the competitive level W star, where supply equals to demand. Now, if the government could set the minimum wage at the competitive level W star, then a monopsonistic firm would then employ the same number of workers that would be employed if the markets were competitive, and workers would be paid the competitive wage rate and there would be no unemployment. So, a well designed minimum wage can completely eliminate the market power of monopsonist and prevent the exploitation of the workers. So, the implementation of this minimum wage in a monopsonist market can have several economic impacts, like implementation of minimum wage leads to higher wages for the workers. So, on the primary effect of this implementing minimum wage in a monopsonist market is that it leads to higher wages for the workers, since monopsony employer has significant bargaining power and can potentially set the wage below the competitive level. A minimum wage floor ensures that workers are paid at least a certain amount that improves their standard of living. Further, implementation of minimum wage reduces the monopsony power in the labor market. By setting a minimum wage, the government reduces the monopsony power's ability to pay wages below the competitive level. So, this can mitigate the exploitation of workers and shift some power back to the labor force. Further, it has been observed that in response to the higher wage, when the minimum wage is implemented, then this higher wage cost mandated by this minimum wage law, this monopsony employer might reduce the number of workers they employ in the farm. Since they can no longer pay the wage below the minimum level, they may find it more cost effective to hire fewer workers or invest in labor saving technologies. So, this can lead to unemployment or underemployment which affect the market. There is some effect on the efficiency at the aggregate level. In some cases, the imposition of minimum wage can lead to efficiency gain in the labor market. By ensuring that the workers are paid a certain minimum level, it can incentivize the farms to invest in training and skill development for their employees, leading to more productive workforce for the long run. So, it has some positive impact in terms of efficiency when it comes to the long run on the workforce. When we look at what would be the price effect, so this higher wage, because of the implementation of this minimum wage, this offsets the higher wage costs, and the monopsony employer might increase the price of their products in the product market. Now, because of the implementation of this minimum wage, the cost of the labor has increased, which may reflect that the price of these products may increase in the product market. So, this can lead to inflationary pressure in the economy, affecting the consumer's purchasing power when it comes to the price effect in the product market. Implementation of minimum wage further can impact the income redistribution in the economy. So, implementation of a minimum wage can also have redistributive effect by transferring income from employer to low wage workers. So, this can help in reducing the income inequality and improve overall economic welfare, particularly for the low income households in the economy. So, the overall economic impact of implementing a minimum wage in a monopsony market involve a complex interplay between higher wages for the workers and potential reduction in the employment. There is some efficiency effects and the price effects are there, and there could be some income redistribution. So, the net impact depends on various factors, as we have seen that there is some positive impacts and there is some negative impact. So, the net impact depends on various factors such as the level of minimum wage, the elasticity of labor demand and supply, and the overall structure of the market, that what is the composition of the labor market, how many are in the formal sector, how many are in the informal sector, what is the elasticity of labor demand and labor supply. So, this imposition of this minimum wage and its outcome depends on the elasticity of labor demand and labor supply and the structure of the labor market. In summary, we can say that a non-discriminating monopsonist hire fewer workers than would be higher in a competitive labor market and pays them lower wages. Further, the imposition of minimum wage on a monopsony can increase both wage and number of workers employed in the economy. A particular firm may have some monopsony power even in labor markets that may seem competitive when the workers find it costly to move across the farms. So, these are some of the summaries if we conclude this lecture. In our next lecture, we will discuss about the labor market outcomes in a non-competitive labor market and a monopoly. Thank you.